Hey everyone, Dean Smith here with another quick tip on rectangular connectors. So today I wanted to talk about choosing your components for a rectangular connector. This could be one of the most overwhelming processes that you go through when you're dealing with designing in a rectangular connector, as there's so many different components available and uh, just thousands and thousands, and just trying to figure out which ones to choose and how to choose them and what do you need to take into account. It can be overwhelming. So I want to go over just a couple of things that I do here to help me get through an assembly and help build up that assembly so that I'm not going back and redoing work over and over again, trying to refit another component after I've chosen a different one, and so on and so forth. So when you start out, first understand the type of connection that you want to make. Do you want to do a cable to cable connection? Do you want to do something where it's surface mounted, where you might have this, instead of going through a panel, it might just mount onto a wall and have cables coming out there? Or do you want to do more of a traditional panel mount where you're leading into the inside of a control cabinet and you have your connector on the outside? So understand what kind of connection you want first. Then think about if there are any industry standards that have to be met with this. You know, is it going on a UL 5088 cabinet? What type ratings need to be involved there? Is it just a cable to cable connection, or is it a connection that's going on to a device of some sort? And in those cases, you might just have to have, like, for instance, a UL electrical requirement or approval on the inserts themselves, and not necessarily need the type rating, though you'll want to pay attention to IP ratings and things like that for the environment that you're in. So understand your environment, the industry standards, type of connection. Once you have all of that going on and you're thinking about all of that as you go through your product, the components, understand that there's really three basic parts to the connector. With that, you have your inserts that are going to actually connect your wires to the wires inside the housings. Those are where your electrical connection is actually happening. Then you have your housings, which are going to protect all those inserts and all those connections that you make. And then you have your cable entry. In the case of a panel, there's not really much going on there. It's just coming up from the inside of a panel. But most of the time you're talking about a cable gland, or you're talking about maybe conduit or something like that you're bringing up to the connection to protect those wires coming into your connector in the first place. So with that, the first place I start is with the inserts. Start on the inside and work your way out and away. With the inserts, probably the most basic thing you want to understand is your wire size, whether that's AWG or square millimeters, what have you. As long as you understand the conductor, the actual size of the conductors, and look at that first, so you know how know how many of them that you have, how many wires, and how many, what sizes are each of those wires. The other thing, you just, as a basic electrical, get your voltage and your amperage. These connectors tend to be rated for a max amperage and a max voltage. And while when you're trying to figure out what to run amperage and voltage wise through the connector, those are going to impact each other. The actual ratings for your amperage and voltage are independent of one another. So know what your max current and your max voltage are for those two, for those wires. There's obviously other things that are going to come into play, especially if you're getting into data signals and things like that. Your ohms, your just whether it's shielded or not, that sort of thing. Understand those types of scenarios, especially if you're looking at a modular system and you have power end signal running through this. Make sure you're choosing inserts that have their own shielding on them so they protect them from power inserts right alongside. So understand that, get that, and that'll help you build into your size. Help you choose your modular inserts if you're doing multiple wire types coming in. If it's something else where you just have a fixed insert, you'll have the number of wires in that. But you also want to think about your termination style, because if you're using something like a spring connection, like these PT or push-in style connections, you're going to have a range. Or if you have a screw connection, you're going to have a wire range that can fit into each one of these contacts. Whereas if you're using something more like a crimp insert, it's going to accept a range of contacts, but a lot of times those turned contacts are only good for one wire size at a time, and it might be one size contact on the outside, but inside it has different holes for different wire gauges and wire sizes. Some of the stamped and formed or rolled contacts, punch rolled contacts, those will accept actually a range of wire gauges as well. It just depends on what the crimp height is and that sort of thing. Anyway, so once you choose your inserts, that's going to define how much space is required for the overall connection. That's going to start feeding that out, because that's the smallest part, and if size is a concern, you're going to be trying to find the smallest insert that you can to work that application. If size doesn't matter, you might be looking for something more along the lines of convenience, as far as oh, can I fit a bunch of different wire gauges into one fixed insert? Okay, then I go with that. But if I have a wide range and I just need to go from one insert to another, but I want to get it all in one connector, modular might be the way to go. So after that, I skip the housing. You might think that picking out the housing is the next thing to do. I don't know. Don't go there. Actually, step on out and look at your wire inlet, the actual point where you're going to seal the cable coming into the connector. So that could be a standard cable gland with a fixed jacketed cable. It could be bringing in conduit, and you have to understand the thread, or maybe you're using a different thread size, maybe a national pipe thread, and you're trying to go into a metric connector eventually, or you think you might be. Understand that a lot of times if you're bringing in multiple cables, you're going to be using some kind of hose or conduit coming in, and that'll lead to a different size coming in there. But ultimately, whatever you get to, knowing the overall diameter of your cables or the bundle of cables that are coming in, that's going to lead you to some adapter to seal that up, and it'll ultimately lead to a thread size, the final thread size that goes into your connector at the end of the day. And that's going to define a little bit about the housing that you're going to choose next as well. So when you get to the housings themselves, if you're using a panel mounting base, you're just feeding up, there's nothing to seal in there. However, if you're when you're on the plug side, or if you're on a surface mounting base, you're going to have a defined thread coming into these housings. So once you have that thread picked out, you can pick a housing that not only holds your insert, but that also accommodates that adapter coming in. So that would be the final step. Get your inserts, get your cable entry, then pick your housing. And your housing is going to depend on the environment. Is plastic okay? Is metal, do you need metal for ruggedness or for some other environmental reasons? That's when you can get into all of that. But understand your inserts first, then your cable entry, and then come back to the housing. And obviously, the environmental, more your mechanical environmental concerns are going to be addressed in the cable entry and the housing, and the inserts are going to be focused mostly on your electrical, but also in mechanical sizing in that as well. So you could be, so there's other cable entries as well, where you might be having some kind of unique adapter that fits in, so you have to make sure you have a housing that fits up with that unique adapter point, and then that can snap on there. So that's it, really. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. I'll take a look at that and see if I can help you out. If you have any ideas for any other quick tips, something else you were wondering about with rectangular connectors, share that in the comments as well. I'd love to see it. So again, that's it for this time, and until next time, keep it heavy with HEAVYCON.